Captain Sarah Mitchell adjusted her helmet as she climbed into the cockpit of her F-16 Fighting Falcon. The morning sun cast long shadows across the tarmac at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. She had been flying combat missions for 8 years, but today felt different. Something in the briefing room had set her nerves on edge. The intelligence officer had been unusually quiet during the mission overview. Foreign aircraft had been spotted approaching NATO airspace near the Baltic Sea. The planes were unidentified, flying in formation, and maintaining radio silence. Sarah's squadron was tasked with intercepting them and determining their intentions. As she ran through her pre-flight checks, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a routine intercept. The other pilots in her four-ship formation seemed equally tense. Lieutenant Colonel James Rodriguez, their flight leader, had 30 years of experience and rarely showed concern. Today, his jaw was set tight as he spoke over the radio. "Falcon Flight, this is lead. Weather is clear, visibility unlimited. We'll proceed to checkpoint Alpha and await further instructions from control." His voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too many close calls. Sarah's wingman, Captain Mike Chen, pulled alongside her aircraft as they taxied toward the runway. Through his canopy, she could see him giving her a thumbs up. They had flown together for 2 years and had developed an almost telepathic understanding in the air. If trouble found them today, she knew Mike would be right there beside her. The tower cleared them for takeoff, and, one by one, the 4 F-16s accelerated down the runway. Sarah felt the familiar rush as her aircraft lifted off, the ground falling away beneath her. Within minutes, they were climbing through 10,000 feet, heading northeast toward the intercept coordinates. The Baltic Sea stretched endlessly below them, its gray waters reflecting the overcast sky. Sarah had flown over these waters dozens of times during her deployment, but today the landscape seemed more ominous. Intelligence reports had been increasingly concerning over the past month. Foreign military activity had increased significantly in the region, and tensions were rising. "Falcon Flight, this is Control. We have radar contact with unknown aircraft bearing 040, range 60 miles. Maintain current heading and altitude. Rules of engagement are as briefed." The voice from the air traffic controller was professional but carried an underlying urgency. Sarah checked her radar display and soon picked up the contacts. For aircraft in diamond formation, flying at 25,000 feet. Their speed and altitude suggested military aircraft, but their identity remained unknown. As they closed the distance, Sarah noticed something unusual about the radar signatures. "Lead, this is 3. Those contacts are showing some interesting characteristics on my scope. Profile doesn't match anything in our recognition manual." Sarah had spent countless hours studying aircraft identification, and these returns were puzzling. "Copy that, 3. Stay sharp, everyone. We don't know what we're dealing with here." Rodriguez's experience was showing. He had learned never to assume anything during an intercept mission. As they approached the unknown aircraft, Sarah began preparing for visual identification procedures. Standard protocol required them to close to within visual range and attempt to identify the aircraft type, nationality, and intentions. If the unknowns were hostile, things could escalate quickly. The 4 F-16s spread into intercept formation, with Rodriguez taking the lead position. Sarah and Mike moved to the right side while the 4th aircraft, flown by Captain Lisa Park, took position on the left. They had practiced this maneuver hundreds of times, but real-world intercepts always carried additional risks. "Contact, 12 o'clock, slightly high. I can make out 4 aircraft in formation." Rodriguez had spotted the unknowns first. Sarah strained her eyes against the glare and soon saw them too. The aircraft were sleek and angular, unlike anything she had seen before. Their wings swept back dramatically, and they seemed to move through the air with an almost predatory grace. As they drew closer, Sarah realized these weren't conventional fighter aircraft. "Control, Falcon lead. We have visual contact with 4 unknown aircraft. They appear to be stealth fighters, possibly 5th generation. Cannot determine nationality at this time." Rodriguez's voice remained calm, but Sarah could hear the concern underneath. The response from control was immediate. Falcon lead, maintain visual contact and attempt radio communication. Do not engage unless fired upon. Rodriguez switched to the international emergency frequency. Unknown aircraft, this is NATO patrol. You are approaching restricted airspace. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. Silence filled the radio waves. The unknown aircraft maintained their course and altitude, showing no signs of responding to the hail. Sarah felt her heart rate increasing as she realized they might be dealing with a potential threat. Lead, they're not responding to radio calls. Should we close for a better look? Mike's voice carried the tension they were all feeling. Negative, 2. Maintain current distance and observe. Control, the unknown aircraft are not responding to radio communication. Requesting further instructions. As they flew alongside the mysterious aircraft, Sarah began studying them more carefully. The design was unlike anything in her aircraft recognition training. The planes had no visible external weapons, but that didn't mean they weren't armed. Modern stealth fighters could carry weapons internally, hidden from view. What bothered her most was the complete silence from the unknown pilots. Professional military aviators usually acknowledged intercepts, even if they didn't provide detailed information. The lack of any response suggested either a communication problem or deliberate hostility. Falcon Flight, this is control. Higher authority is tracking this situation. Continue visual contact but do not escalate. Additional assets are being scrambled to your location. Sarah felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Backup was coming, but the fact that higher command was involved suggested this situation was more serious than a routine intercept. She glanced at her fuel gauge and noted they had about 40 minutes of station time remaining. The unknown aircraft suddenly began a gentle turn to the east, still maintaining formation. Rodriguez followed their movement, keeping his flight position to observe. Sarah noticed that the lead unknown aircraft had what appeared to be unusual markings on its fuselage, but she couldn't make them out clearly from their current distance. 3. Can you get a better look at those markings on the lead aircraft? Rodriguez had noticed the same thing. Sarah eased her F-16 slightly closer, being careful not to appear threatening. Military intercepts followed unwritten rules of engagement, and sudden movements could be misinterpreted. As she closed the distance, the markings became clearer. What she saw made her blood run cold. The symbols on the aircraft weren't from any friendly nation. They belonged to a country that had been increasingly aggressive in its military posture over the past year. If these aircraft were operating this far from their home territory, it represented a significant escalation in regional tensions. Lead, I can confirm the nationality of these aircraft. They're definitely not friendly. Sarah kept her voice steady despite the adrenaline surge. Copy that, 3. Control, we have positive identification of the unknown aircraft. They are foreign military assets operating in proximity to NATO airspace. The response from Control was swift. Falcon lead, maintain contact but increase separation. Do not engage unless directly threatened. Additional F-35 assets are inbound to your location, ETA 10 minutes. Sarah felt some relief knowing that more advanced aircraft were coming to assist. The F-35 Lightning II was a fifth-generation stealth fighter with capabilities that surpassed her F-16. If the situation escalated, they would need every advantage available. As they continued the intercept, Sarah noticed the unknown aircraft beginning to spread their formation. What had been a tight diamond pattern was now becoming a more tactical spread. This change suggested they were aware of the F-16s and possibly preparing for defensive or offensive action. Lead, they're changing formation. Looks like they know we're here. Mike had observed the same thing. Roger, 2. Everyone stay alert. They may be positioning for something. The next few minutes passed with agonizing slowness. The unknown aircraft maintained their easterly heading while the F-16s shadowed them. Sarah kept scanning her radar warning receiver, watching for any indication that they were being targeted by hostile systems. Suddenly, her radio crackled with a new voice. Falcon Flight, this is Lightning Lead. 4 F-35s approaching your location from the south. We'll be taking over this intercept. Sarah looked toward the southern horizon and soon spotted 4 small dots approaching rapidly. The F-35s were flying much higher than her formation, giving them a tactical advantage if the situation deteriorated. As the lightning flight drew closer, Sarah prepared to brief them on what her formation had observed. The unknown aircraft had maintained course and altitude for nearly 20 minutes without responding to radio calls. Their nationality had been confirmed as hostile, and they were showing tactical awareness by changing formation. Lightning lead, this is Falcon 3. The unknowns have been non-responsive to radio communication and are confirmed foreign military. They changed to a more tactical spread about 5 minutes ago. Copy, Falcon 3. We're taking over from here. You can return to base. Sarah felt mixed emotions about being dismissed from the intercept. Part of her was relieved to be out of a potentially dangerous situation, but another part wanted to see how things would develop. The unknown aircraft represented a significant intelligence opportunity, and she wondered what the F-35 pilots would discover. As Falcon flight began their turn toward home base, Sarah took one last look at the mysterious aircraft. They continued eastward, their sleek forms cutting through the sky with an almost ominous purpose. Whatever their mission, it was clear they hadn't expected to encounter NATO fighters this far from their home territory. The flight back to Ramstein was quiet, each pilot lost in their own thoughts about what they had witnessed. Sarah knew that intelligence officers would want detailed debriefings from all of them. The presence of foreign stealth fighters in the region was significant news that would likely reach the highest levels of NATO command. As they approached the traffic pattern at Ramstein, Sarah's mind was already racing ahead to the debriefing. She had gotten a good look at the aircraft and their markings, information that could prove valuable for intelligence analysis. The fact that they had shown tactical awareness suggested experienced pilots, which made their presence even more concerning. Landing back at base felt almost surreal after the tension of the intercept mission. As Sarah taxied her F-16 back to the parking area, she could see that the base was already buzzing with activity. Additional aircraft were being prepared for launch, and she noticed several vehicles with intelligence markings heading toward the squadron building. Whatever they had encountered out there over the Baltic Sea was just the beginning of something much larger. 2 hours after landing, Sarah found herself sitting in a secure conference room deep within Ramstein Air Base's intelligence facility. The walls were lined with monitors displaying classified information, and the air conditioning hummed quietly in the background. She had been through countless debriefings, but the intensity of this one was unlike anything she had experienced. Colonel Patricia Hayes, the wing intelligence officer, sat across from her with a laptop and several thick folders. Hayes was known throughout the base for her sharp analytical mind and no-nonsense approach to intelligence gathering. She had served in combat zones around the world and had a reputation for getting to the truth quickly. Captain Mitchell, I want you to walk me through every detail of the intercept, starting from the moment you first acquired radar contact. Hayes's voice was calm but focused. Take your time and don't leave anything out, no matter how insignificant it might seem. Sarah began recounting the mission chronologically, describing the radar contacts, the visual identification, and her observations of the unknown aircraft. Hayes took detailed notes and occasionally asked clarifying questions about specific aspects of the encounter. You mentioned unusual markings on the lead aircraft. Can you describe them in more detail? Hayes leaned forward slightly, clearly interested in this particular aspect. The markings were definitely foreign military insignia, but there was something else. The aircraft had what looked like squadron patches or unit identifiers that I didn't recognize. Sarah paused, trying to recall every detail. The lead aircraft also had some kind of nose art, which seemed unusual for a stealth fighter. Hayes made another note and then pulled out a tablet displaying various aircraft recognition images. I want you to look at these photos and tell me if any of them match what you saw today. Sarah studied the images carefully. Most showed conventional fighter aircraft from various nations, but none matched the sleek, angular design of the unknown aircraft. The planes she had intercepted were clearly more advanced than anything shown in the reference materials. None of these are even close, Colonel. What we saw today was definitely a fifth-generation stealth fighter, but the design was unlike anything in our databases. Sarah handed the tablet back to Hayes. That's what I was afraid of. Hayes closed the tablet and pulled out a classified folder marked with red borders. Captain, what I'm about to show you is highly classified. You'll need to sign additional non-disclosure agreements before we proceed. Sarah signed the required documents without hesitation. She had held a top-secret clearance for years and understood the importance of protecting sensitive information. Hayes opened the folder and spread several satellite images across the table. These photos were taken over the past 6 months at various locations around the globe. We've been tracking the development and deployment of a new class of stealth fighters by a foreign power. Until today, we had never encountered them in operational conditions. The satellite images showed sleek aircraft similar to what Sarah had seen, but these were photographed on the ground at various military installations. The resolution was impressive, clearly showing details of the aircraft's design and configuration. Intelligence estimates suggest these aircraft represent a significant advancement in stealth technology. They're faster, more maneuverable, and potentially more lethal than our current generation of fighters. Hayes pointed to specific features visible in the photographs. Sarah studied the images with growing concern. If these aircraft were as advanced as Hayes suggested, they represented a major shift in the balance of air power. The fact that they were now operating near NATO airspace was particularly troubling. Colonel, what's the assessment of their intentions? Were they conducting reconnaissance, or was this some kind of probe of our defenses? Sarah had been wondering about this since the intercept. That's the million-dollar question, Captain. The aircraft you intercepted were flying a route that would take them directly over several sensitive NATO installations. They were either gathering intelligence or sending a message about their capabilities. Hayes pulled out another set of documents, these marked with even higher classification levels. What makes this encounter particularly significant is that these aircraft have never been observed this far from their home territory. This represents a major extension of their operational range. The implications were staggering. If these advanced fighters could operate at such distances, it suggested the development of new refueling capabilities or forward staging areas. Either scenario represented a significant threat to regional security. There's something else you need to know, Captain. Hayes's voice took on an even more serious tone. The Lightning flight that took over your intercept reported some very interesting observations. Sarah leaned forward, eager to hear what the F-35 pilots had discovered after she and her wingmen had returned to base. The F-35s were able to get much closer to the unknown aircraft using their stealth capabilities. They observed the unknowns for nearly an hour before the foreign fighters finally departed the area. Hayes consulted her notes before continuing. During that time, the Lightning pilots were able to photograph the aircraft and record their electronic emissions. The intelligence gathered from that encounter is already being analyzed at the highest levels. Sarah felt a mix of professional curiosity and concern. The fact that the F-35s had been able to observe the unknown aircraft for an extended period suggested either that the foreign pilots were unaware of their presence or that they simply didn't care about being monitored. What did the Lightning pilots discover about their capabilities? Sarah asked. Hayes paused before answering, clearly weighing how much information she could share. Let's just say that our assumptions about their performance characteristics may have been conservative. These aircraft appear to be even more advanced than our intelligence estimates suggested. The colonel stood and walked to one of the wall-mounted displays, which showed a map of the region. Red symbols indicated the flight path of the unknown aircraft, while blue symbols showed the positions of NATO forces during the intercept. Captain, I want you to look at this flight path and tell me what you think their objectives might have been. Hayes pointed to the route the unknown aircraft had taken. Sarah studied the map carefully. The foreign fighters had approached from the east, flown parallel to the coastline for nearly 200 miles, then turned back toward their home territory. The route would have given them an excellent view of several major NATO installations. It looks like a reconnaissance mission, Colonel. They were positioning themselves to observe our bases and potentially test our response times. Sarah traced the flight path with her finger. That's our assessment as well. But there's something else that concerns us. Hayes highlighted several points along the route. At each of these locations, we detected unusual electronic activity. The unknowns were definitely gathering signals intelligence. The revelation that the foreign aircraft had been conducting electronic surveillance added another layer of concern to the encounter. Modern military operations depended heavily on electronic systems, and any compromise of those systems could have serious consequences. "Colonel, were they able to penetrate any of our security systems?" Sarah asked. "That's still being investigated, but preliminary analysis suggests they were primarily in a collection mode rather than attempting to jam or disrupt our systems." Hayes returned to her seat. "However, the sophistication of their electronic warfare capabilities is quite impressive." The debriefing continued for another hour as Hayes walked Sarah through every aspect of the encounter. They discussed the tactical implications of the foreign aircraft's capabilities, the potential threat they represented to NATO operations, and the intelligence value of the observations made during the intercept. As the session neared its end, Hayes pulled out one final document. "Captain, based on your performance today and your experience with this type of aircraft, you're being considered for a special assignment." Sarah raised an eyebrow. Special assignments in the intelligence world often meant either very good opportunities or very dangerous missions. "We're forming a new unit specifically tasked with tracking and countering these advanced foreign fighters. The unit will be equipped with our most advanced aircraft and will work closely with intelligence agencies from several allied nations." Hayes slid the document across the table. Sarah scanned the document quickly. The assignment would mean leaving her current squadron and moving to a classified location for an indefinite period. It would also mean working with experimental aircraft and tactics that were still in development. "Colonel, this sounds like a significant career change. What kind of timeline are we looking at?" Sarah asked. "If you accept, you would begin training within 2 weeks. The unit is being stood up quickly in response to the threat these aircraft represent." Hayes leaned back in her chair. "I should mention that this assignment comes with certain risks. You would be flying against the most advanced opposition aircraft in the world." Sarah considered the offer carefully. Her current assignment was comfortable and relatively safe, but this new opportunity represented a chance to work at the cutting edge of air combat technology. The risks were significant, but so were the potential rewards. "Colonel, would I be working with the same pilots who are on today's mission?" Sarah asked. "That's still being determined, but it's likely that several pilots from today's intercept will be selected for the unit. Your experience and observations make you a valuable asset for this type of operation." The meeting concluded with Sarah agreeing to consider the assignment. Hayes gave her 48 hours to make her decision and emphasized the importance of maintaining absolute secrecy about the offer. As Sarah left the intelligence facility, her mind was racing with thoughts about the encounter and the potential assignment. The unknown aircraft represented a significant threat, but they also represented an opportunity to work with the most advanced technology available. Walking back to her squadron building, Sarah noticed increased activity throughout the base. Additional security personnel were visible at key locations, and she saw several aircraft that she didn't recognize parked in restricted areas. Whatever was happening was clearly much larger than just today's intercept. That evening, Sarah sat in her quarters reviewing everything that had happened. The encounter with the unknown aircraft had lasted less than 30 minutes, but it had potentially changed the course of her career. The foreign fighters represented a new level of threat that NATO would need to counter with equally advanced capabilities. She thought about the offer from Colonel Hayes. The assignment would be challenging and potentially dangerous, but it would also place her at the forefront of the most important air combat developments of her generation. The decision wouldn't be easy, but Sarah knew that opportunities like this didn't come along often. As she prepared for sleep, Sarah's mind kept returning to the sleek, angular aircraft she had intercepted that morning. Somewhere out there, foreign pilots were probably debriefing their own leadership about their encounter with NATO fighters. The game of military chess was becoming increasingly complex, and she might have the opportunity to play a key role in the next moves. 3 days after her debriefing with Colonel Hayes, Sarah received word that the F-35 pilots from the intercept mission wanted to meet with her. The request came through unofficial channels, which immediately raised her curiosity. Lieutenant Colonel Rebecca Chen, the Lightning flight leader, had asked to speak with her privately about something they had discovered during their extended observation of the unknown aircraft. The meeting was arranged at a small cafe off base, away from the prying eyes and ears that were always present in military facilities. Sarah arrived first and chose a corner table that offered privacy and a clear view of the entrance. When Lieutenant Colonel Chen arrived, she was accompanied by another F-35 pilot, Major David Park. "Captain Mitchell, thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Chen slid into the seat across from Sarah. "What we're about to discuss isn't classified, but it's definitely sensitive." Major Park placed a tablet on the table but kept it face down for the moment. "During our extended observation of the unknown aircraft, we were able to capture some very high-resolution images using our advanced sensors. What we found was quite surprising." Sarah leaned forward with interest. The F-35 sensor capabilities were legendary, able to capture details that would be invisible to conventional aircraft systems. "Captain, you mentioned in your debriefing that you observed unusual markings on the lead aircraft. We were able to get much clearer images of those markings." Chen turned the tablet over and activated the screen. The image that appeared was startlingly clear. It showed the side of the lead unknown aircraft in incredible detail, revealing markings that Sarah had only glimpsed during the intercept. What she saw made her gasp audibly. Clearly visible on the fuselage was a squadron patch that she recognized immediately. It wasn't from any foreign military unit, as everyone had assumed. The patch belonged to the 422nd Test and Evaluation Squadron, a highly classified American unit that operated out of Edwards Air Force Base in California. "That's impossible," Sarah whispered, staring at the image. Those aircraft were definitely foreign. The markings, the flight profile, everything indicated they were hostile. Major Park nodded grimly. "That was our reaction too. But there's more. Look at this image of the second aircraft." He swiped to another photo that showed additional details. The aircraft bore not only the 422nd Squadron patch but also a small American flag decal near the cockpit. The implications were staggering and deeply troubling. "Are you suggesting that those were American aircraft conducting some kind of training exercise?" Sarah asked, though even as she said it, she knew that explanation didn't fit the facts. "That's what we hoped initially," Chen replied. "But we did some checking through back channels. The 422nd Squadron is accounted for. All their aircraft were on the ground at Edwards during the time of our intercept. The mystery was deepening rather than being solved. If the aircraft weren't foreign and they weren't from the 422nd Squadron, then what was their true origin?" Sarah studied the images more carefully, looking for additional clues. "There's something else that bothers us," Major Park continued. "The electronic signatures we recorded don't match anything in our databases, friend or foe. These aircraft are using technology that we don't have information about." Sarah's mind raced through the possibilities. Stolen aircraft, rogue units, false flag operations, none of the explanations seemed to fit all the facts they had observed. "Have you reported this to intelligence?" Sarah asked. Chen and Park exchanged a meaningful look. "That's where things get complicated. We tried to follow normal channels, but our reports seem to disappear into a black hole. No one will give us straight answers about what we photographed." The implications were becoming clear and deeply unsettling. If American squadron patches were being displayed on unknown aircraft using technology that didn't officially exist, then they had stumbled into something far more complex than a simple intercept mission. "There's another possibility we need to consider," Sarah said quietly. "What if those aircraft were part of a black program that we're not cleared to know about?" The existence of highly classified aircraft programs was well known within military aviation circles, even if the details remained secret. The development of stealth technology had produced numerous aircraft that operated for years before their existence was publicly acknowledged. "That occurred to us too," Chen replied. "But if that's the case, why were they flying so close to NATO airspace without proper coordination? And why won't anyone acknowledge their existence when we ask direct questions?" Major Park pulled up another image on the tablet. "This is what really convinced us that something unusual is going on. Look at the pilot of the lead aircraft. Sarah studied the new image carefully. The resolution was remarkable, showing the pilot clearly through the aircraft's canopy. What she saw sent chills down her spine. The pilot was wearing a standard American flight suit and helmet, but there was something wrong with the scene. The pilot appears to be unconscious or incapacitated, Sarah observed. His head position and body language don't suggest active control of the aircraft. Exactly, Chen confirmed. All 4 aircraft showed similar signs. The pilots appeared to be present but not actively flying their aircraft. The revelation added an entirely new dimension to the mystery. If the pilots weren't actively controlling the aircraft, then how were they flying such precise formations and executing tactical maneuvers? Are you suggesting these aircraft were operating autonomously? Sarah asked. It's the only explanation that fits all the observed facts, Major Park replied. Advanced autonomous flight systems, stolen or replicated squadron patches, and incapacitated pilots. Someone is operating very sophisticated unmanned aircraft disguised as American military planes. The implications were staggering. Autonomous military aircraft were still largely experimental, with only basic capabilities demonstrated in controlled conditions. The idea that someone had developed fully autonomous fighters capable of intercontinental operations was both impressive and terrifying. Who has that kind of capability? Sarah wondered aloud. That's the question that keeps us awake at night, Chen replied. The technology required for this kind of operation is extremely advanced. We're talking about artificial intelligence systems capable of flying complex military missions without human intervention. Sarah thought back to her observations during the intercept. The unknown aircraft had maintained perfect formation throughout the encounter, never showing the small variations that would be expected from human pilots. At the time, she had attributed this precision to exceptional training, but autonomous control would explain it perfectly. There's something else, Major Park continued. We detected communication signals between the aircraft, but they weren't using normal radio frequencies. The communications were encrypted using methods we couldn't decode. The technical sophistication required for such an operation suggested the involvement of a major nation-state with significant resources. However, the use of American squadron patches and the apparent incapacitation of American pilots suggested something even more sinister. What if someone has developed the ability to hijack our aircraft? Sarah speculated. If they can take control of our planes and their pilots, the implications for national security are enormous. Chen nodded gravely. That possibility occurred to us as well. If someone has developed technology to remotely control our most advanced aircraft, they could potentially turn our own air force against us. The conversation continued for another hour as the 3 pilots analyzed every detail of the encounter. They compared observations, studied the photographs, and tried to develop theories that could explain all the evidence they had collected. As the meeting concluded, Chen made a sobering observation. Whatever we encountered out there, it represents a threat unlike anything we've faced before. Traditional rules of engagement don't apply when you can't distinguish between friend and foe. Sarah agreed to maintain contact with the F-35 pilots as they continued their investigation. They had uncovered evidence of something that could fundamentally change the nature of air combat, and they were probably the only people with first-hand knowledge of the threat. Driving back to base, Sarah's mind was churning with questions and possibilities. The discovery of American squadron patches on the unknown aircraft had transformed what seemed like a routine intercept into something much more complex and dangerous. She thought about the special assignment offer from Colonel Hayes. If the intelligence community was forming a unit to counter these advanced aircraft, they might not fully understand the nature of the threat they were facing. The possibility that the unknown aircraft were using hijacked technology or operating autonomously changed everything. That evening, Sarah called Colonel Hayes and requested an urgent meeting. She couldn't reveal what the F-35 pilots had shown her without their permission, but she could share her concerns about the nature of the threat they were confronting. Colonel, I've been thinking about the unknown aircraft we intercepted, and I believe there may be aspects of this threat that we haven't fully considered, Sarah said during the call. What kind of aspects, Captain? Hayes replied. I think we need to consider the possibility that these aircraft are using technology or methods that are fundamentally different from conventional military operations. The threat may be more sophisticated than we initially assessed. There was a pause before Hayes responded. Captain, can you be more specific about your concerns? Sarah chose her words carefully. I think the unit you're forming needs to be prepared for scenarios that go beyond traditional air-to-air combat. We may be dealing with capabilities that require entirely new tactics and countermeasures. Hayes agreed to schedule a meeting for the following day. Sarah hoped that by then, she could convince the F-35 pilots to share their evidence with the intelligence community. The discovery of American squadron patches on the unknown aircraft was too important to keep secret. As she prepared for sleep that night, Sarah realized that her decision about the special assignment had been made for her. The threat represented by the unknown aircraft was too significant to ignore. If there was any chance that enemy forces had developed the ability to hijack American aircraft or deploy autonomous fighters, then every available resource needed to be committed to countering that threat. The squadron patch discovery had changed everything, transforming a mysterious encounter into a potential national security crisis that could reshape the future of military aviation. The secure conference room at Ramstein Air Base had been transformed into what looked like a military command center. Multiple large screens displayed satellite imagery, technical diagrams, and intelligence reports. Sarah entered to find not only Colonel Hayes but also several officers she didn't recognize, including a two-star general whose presence immediately elevated the importance of the meeting. Captain Mitchell, thank you for requesting this urgent session, Colonel Hayes began. I want you to meet General Patricia Stone from the Defense Intelligence Agency. She flew in specifically to discuss your concerns about the unknown aircraft. General Stone was a compact woman with steel-gray hair and intense eyes that suggested she had seen some of the military's most closely guarded secrets. Her presence confirmed that Sarah's concerns were being taken seriously at the highest levels. Captain, Colonel Hayes tells me you believe there are aspects of this threat that we haven't fully understood. I'm here because recent intelligence has confirmed some very disturbing possibilities. General Stone gestured toward one of the large screens. The screen displayed a world map with dozens of red markers scattered across multiple continents. Each marker was labeled with dates and brief descriptions of aircraft encounters that bore similarities to Sarah's intercept mission. Over the past 6 months, we've recorded 47 encounters with aircraft matching the description of what you intercepted 3 days ago. These encounters have occurred over 6 different continents and involve at least 12 different nations. General Stone used a laser pointer to highlight specific incidents. Sarah studied the map with growing alarm. What they had thought was an isolated incident was actually part of a much larger pattern of activity spanning the globe. General, are you saying that these aircraft have been conducting operations worldwide? Sarah asked. That's exactly what I'm saying, Captain. And, until your intercept mission, we had no idea they were using American squadron patches and potentially compromising American personnel. General Stone clicked a remote control, and the screen changed to display the high-resolution photographs that Lieutenant Colonel Chan and Major Park had captured. Sarah was surprised to see that the F-35 pilots had already shared their evidence with the intelligence community. These images represent the first clear documentation of the true nature of these aircraft. What you discovered has fundamentally changed our understanding of the threat we're facing. The general paused to let the implications sink in. Colonel Hayes opened a classified folder and spread several documents across the conference table. Captain, what I'm about to tell you is compartmented at the highest levels. Even the existence of this information is classified above top secret. Sarah signed the required security documents without hesitation, understanding that she was about to learn something that could change her life forever. 3 weeks ago, personnel at Edwards Air Force Base reported the theft of 4 F-35 aircraft from a secure storage facility. The aircraft were experimental variants equipped with advanced autonomous flight systems that were being developed under a black program. Colonel Hayes's voice was grim. The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. The unknown aircraft weren't foreign military assets or hijacked American planes, they were stolen experimental aircraft being operated by unknown parties. The theft was initially covered up pending investigation, but Your intercept mission has forced us to acknowledge that the stolen aircraft are now operational and pose a significant threat to global security. General Stone continued the briefing. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. If the aircraft were experimental F-35 variants with autonomous capabilities, then whoever stole them had access to America's most advanced military technology. General, who has the capability to conduct such a sophisticated theft and, then, operate these aircraft globally? Sarah asked. That's the question we've been trying to answer for 3 weeks. The theft required detailed knowledge of the aircraft systems, security protocols, and flight operations. It was an inside job conducted by people with the highest level of access. General Stone's expression was grave. The screen changed again to display personnel files and security records. Sarah recognized some of the faces as members of the 422nd Test and Evaluation Squadron whose patches had appeared on the stolen aircraft. We've identified several personnel with access to the stolen aircraft who disappeared around the time of the theft. These individuals had top-secret clearances and detailed knowledge of the autonomous flight systems. Colonel Hayes pointed to specific photos. Sarah studied the personnel files carefully. The missing individuals included pilots, technicians, and engineers who would have been capable of operating and maintaining the stolen aircraft independently. Are you saying that American military personnel stole these aircraft and are now operating them for unknown purposes? Sarah asked. That appears to be the case, but we don't understand their motivations or objectives. The global pattern of operations suggests they're conducting some kind of intelligence gathering or testing operation. General Stone activated another screen showing flight patterns and target locations. The stolen aircraft had been observed near military installations, government facilities, and critical infrastructure sites around the world. In each case, they had conducted what appeared to be reconnaissance missions before departing without engaging local forces. The autonomous flight systems allow these aircraft to operate for extended periods without direct pilot control. The pilots you observed may have been unconscious due to the effects of high-G maneuvers or extended flight times. Colonel Hayes consulted her notes. Sarah remembered the appearance of the pilots during the intercept. Their inactive postures now made sense if they were experiencing the physical effects of autonomous flight operations that pushed the aircraft beyond normal human tolerances. What's particularly concerning is that these aircraft have demonstrated capabilities that exceed our current operational F-35s. The autonomous systems appear to enable performance that wouldn't be possible with human pilots. General Stone highlighted technical specifications on one of the screens. The implications were staggering. The stolen aircraft weren't just copies of existing technology, they represented advances that could revolutionize air combat if they fell into the wrong hands. General, what's being done to locate and recover these aircraft? Sarah asked. That's where the special assignment Colonel Hayes offered you becomes critical. We're forming a task force with one primary mission: track down and neutralize the stolen aircraft before their technology can be compromised further. General Stone stood and walked to a map showing potential locations where the stolen aircraft might be operating from. Red circles indicated possible base locations based on flight patterns and fuel requirements. The task force will include our most experienced pilots flying our most advanced available aircraft. You'll be working with international partners who have also been targeted by these rogue operations. The general's tone became more urgent. Sarah realized that accepting the assignment would mean hunting down American aircraft operated by American personnel who had gone rogue for unknown reasons. It was unlike any military mission she had ever contemplated. Captain, there's something else you need to know. Intelligence suggests that the stolen aircraft are just the beginning of a larger operation. We believe the perpetrators are planning something much more significant. Colonel Hayes opened another classified folder. The document showed financial records, communication intercepts, and travel patterns that suggested a well-funded and organized operation with global reach. The aircraft theft was apparently part of a larger plan that remained unclear. We've identified connections to several international organizations that have expressed opposition to current American military policies. The stolen aircraft may be intended for use in some kind of demonstration or attack that would embarrass or damage American interests. General Stone returned to her seat. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. The decision about the special assignment was no longer just about her career, it was about protecting national security and preventing the misuse of America's most advanced military technology. General, if I accept this assignment, what kind of timeline are we looking at for locating these aircraft? Sarah asked. Intelligence suggests they're planning some kind of major operation within the next 30 days. We need to locate and neutralize them before that timeline expires. The general's response was direct and urgent. The meeting continued for another 2 hours as Sarah received detailed briefings on the task force's mission, capabilities, and rules of engagement. She learned that she would be flying experimental aircraft that were even more advanced than the stolen F-35s, giving her a technological edge in any potential confrontation. As the briefing concluded, Sarah made her decision. The threat represented by the stolen aircraft was too significant to ignore, and she was one of the few people with first-hand knowledge of their capabilities and limitations. General, I accept the assignment. When do I report for duty? Sarah's voice was steady and determined. Immediately, Captain. Transportation is waiting to take you to your new assignment. You'll be briefing your new squadron within 6 hours. General Stone stood and extended her hand. As Sarah shook the general's hand, she realized that her life had changed forever in just a few short days. What had started as a routine intercept mission had led to the discovery of a conspiracy that threatened global security. Walking toward the transportation that would take her to her new assignment, Sarah thought about the unknown aircraft she had encountered over the Baltic Sea. Somewhere out there, rogue American personnel were operating stolen military aircraft for unknown purposes, and she was now tasked with stopping them. The irony wasn't lost on her that she would be hunting aircraft flown by people who had once served the same flag she served. But the theft of advanced military technology and its potential misuse transcended normal considerations of loyalty and patriotism. The squadron patch that had initially seemed like a simple identification marker had led to the unraveling of a complex conspiracy that could reshape the future of military aviation. Now it was up to Sarah and her new task force to ensure that America's most advanced technology didn't fall into the wrong hands permanently. As her transportation lifted off from Ramstein Air Base, Sarah looked down at the facility where her old life had ended and her new mission had begun. The stakes couldn't be higher, and failure wasn't an option. The future of military technology and global security hung in the balance.